D-bag, it seems, in the college basketball season. I don't know how much college basketball you watch, Tommy, but again, all the tripping incidents that have gone on, it just seems that he's just that guy. He's just the Duke's worst hated player since probably J.J. Redick, if I'm honest. Of course, Coach K having back surgery, as well, adding to the soap opera that is Duke. They went 4-3 when Coach K was out. And then, of course, they've come back and won a couple games. They did lose recently, but they had one over North Carolina and Virginia. And they beat Florida State, and now they play North Carolina again on Saturday. They're going to have a great opportunity to show them who the best team in the ACC is. That mix of young talent, you have Luke Kennard, Jason Tatum, along with veterans like Allen, Emile Jefferson. It should be a matchup nightmare for most teams. Now, being a Coach K-led team, as we've seen, Tommy, the NCAA tournament, they were either almost win the national championship or get bounced down in the first round. Again, if they get it together, if they get out of that first weekend, watch out. But for me personally right now, I don't know. They could be that team that gets bounced out early. Now, we're going to go to Purdue as a hot team, and that's, again, a bold statement to make considering Purdue isn't necessarily the best program year in, year out, but they're the top team right now in the Big Ten, who top to bottom is the deepest league. And they probably have the best roster since the days of Etuan Moore, Juwan Johnson, and Robbie Hummel. They were a solid roster. But Caleb Swanigan is a double-double machine. He's a Wooden Trophy finalist and probably one of the most physically imposing big men at 6'10", 240 pounds. That's a big boy in college. He likes to eat, and he likes to dominate the boards, and he gets to score a lot of points. So for him, Vince Edwards, Isaac Hayes, probably one of the best front courts in the country. And now with games against Northwestern and at Maryland over that 5-game winning streak earlier in the season, and then they still have games against Penn State, Michigan, Indiana, Northwestern. It's going to be very impressive because, again, Wisconsin, Maryland, and Northwestern are still competing for the top spot in the Big Ten. So we'll see what happens there. And then finally, Gonzaga. Now, of course, you're probably going to hear your team, Tommy. Obviously, you love them. I'm going to say here. Look, they probably have the weakest conference out of all these teams. Yeah, but they're still they were undefeated up until that point when I wrote this article. Nigel Williams-Goss, one of the best players in the country, can dominate very well. He's their leading scorer and has helped them to at least an unbeaten record to that point. And again, could have been that first team since Kentucky to go into the tournament without a loss. Obviously, they lost to BYU, so that doesn't matter at this point. Now, veterans like Przemek Karnowski and transfers Jordan Matthews and Jonathan Williams, it should be a pretty good roster. Now, they haven't necessarily played together because all of them are transfers minus Karnowski, but they're all veteran players, junior and senior level, where in the NCAA tournament, having that leadership and having been there before may be important down the stretch. So, Tommy, what do you think? Do you think those are pretty hot teams, assuming they get it all together?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. UCLA, I see them going deep, even though in the projection, they were ranked on the bracket number 3 in the Midwest Division. So they would have to beat out. Now, this is just a simulation. St. Mary's or Marquette, and they would be playing first against Florida Gulf Coast. So I see UCLA dominating right there. Then they would be playing up against possibly Louisville, and then their Elite 8 would be up against Kansas. So that actually, if Kansas and UCLA met up, that would be definitely a game to watch, but I would still give it to UCLA to beat Kansas. When you were talking about my team, Gonzaga, it is true most of the teams that they've won against are in the RPI 101 to 150 and below, but they did have some key victories, such as against Florida, a 77-72 win, Iowa State 73-71 win, and against Arizona, a 69-62 win. Those wins that are like RPI 1 to 50, those are tough wins, and they're very close. So if it's going to be a close match, I do have Gonzaga. But if they're playing up against a UCLA team in like the Final Four, I might have my doubts just a little bit. But seeing that Gonzaga beat Arizona and that Arizona beat UCLA, I have a good feeling that Gonzaga could go deep, and I'm still saying that they are going to go to the Final 2 and possibly become champions of the bracket.
Now, Tommy, obviously, do you still have your Gonzaga jersey that you want to?
I do. I still have that. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. There you go. So now talking more about Gonzaga, they're a team, again, they were last undefeated team in college basketball, lost to BYU, finished the regular season 29-1. Now, they dropped from number 1 to number 4. Obviously, you have Kansas, Nova, and UCLA ahead of them. Again, they have more losses, but overall a stronger conference. And again, in the eyes of the AP, they voted them ahead of Gonzaga. They still have 2 first place votes, so a couple people still think they're the best team in the country. Heading into the tournament, Tommy, does that benefit Gonzaga that they lost before in the regular season heading into their conference tournament and the NCAA tournament rather than going undefeated? Does that relieve pressure, or is that kind of a stinger for them?
There's 2 different scenarios for this. When I look at the UConn women's team, if they lost their streak of over 100 wins before the tournament, I would feel like they would have a little bit of doubt going in. Now, Gonzaga losing to BYU and having their first loss and getting tanked by 3 spots going down to number 4, that's a reality check for them. I see that as being a positive outcome so that they can learn from their mistakes, see what they're having difficulty with, and try and tidy that up so that when they go into the tournament, they can actually play their game and benefit from that loss that they had. To me, a loss and not having a perfect season is usually the best scenario you can have. If you have a perfect season and a perfect bracket going all the way up to being champion, congrats to you. But I feel that one loss actually shows that you're human. You're not some god team, pretty much.
Yeah.
You're going to have some chinks in the armor.
Sure.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. I think for Gonzaga, and we've seen the last couple of seasons, Wichita State going in the tournament undefeated, and we saw how that happened. They run into a buzzsaw of Kentucky, who wasn't that great, but they were still a good team. And then even Kentucky's undefeated team a couple of years ago didn't win it all. So even the best team that you can produce in one of the power conferences like Kentucky. It shows the pressure. Again, with each game mounting, the pressure keeps going. We're undefeated. We haven't lost yet. We can't show our weaknesses. We can't find out what our weaknesses are because we'll lose otherwise. But for the Gonzaga, for them to find out at the end of the regular season, understanding where they need to work on. And again, BYU is not necessarily the worst team to lose to be honest. They won 20 games this season, so they're not a terrible team to lose to. They had one vote in this AP Top 25. So, again, the AP recognizes that BYU is a pretty good team. You also have St. Mary's, who's also ranked 20th in the country as well. So you do have at least 2 teams from the West Coast Conference doing very well. They're always the top 2 typically with them, and also BYU interchanging year in and year out. But I think for Gonzaga overall, it's not a bad thing that they lost. Again, it relieves the pressure heading into the tournament. They know what they need to work on. They're going to probably win the West Coast Conference, if not St. Mary's, or at the very least get it to the final of the conference. That should lock them a 1 or at the very least a 2 seed, and we'll see what happens from there. I do like Gonzaga's chances. I think they have a veteran, as I mentioned previously, they have a veteran lineup. They have Mark Few is a great coach, and he knows how to coach in these situations. He's been to the tournament that seems like the last 10, 15 years, and has done very well with various teams that he's had. Now, finally, at the end of this college basketball segment, we're going to talk about up next. We're talking about Lonzo Ball. So, obviously, he's one of the most explosive players to come out. And, of course, with that, you have parents. Now, I don't know about you, Tommy, but my parents weren't necessarily the most vocal people when I did things growing up, and I was very happy for that. Mainly because, I wasn't necessarily someone who bragged too much or didn't care about my accomplishments. I just wanted to play with my friends. And that's all I really wanted to do. But I guess once you get to a higher level, it seems the parents want to be more involved in the decision-making and almost want to, especially when you get to a tier like this where you can be a top player in the NBA draft. That's a big deal. And for Lonzo Ball's dad, he's had a lot of comments lately that have been very, very interesting, to say the least. I think he's had comments saying that he's better than Steph Curry right now, better than 2-time NBA MVP and NBA champion Steph Curry. And saying that, if he doesn't get drafted to the Lakers, he's not going to be on their team. So he wants him to be close to his son. and be in LA. And of course, have Magic Johnson look after him and trying to mentor him and being the best player that he can be. And on top of that, one final thing that really just put me over the edge, at least, listening to Lonzo Ball's dad, is just that they want a shoe deal, like an exclusive deal, like LeBron and Michael Jordan, which is, I think, ridiculous. I don't think Lonzo Ball is that good to get a shoe deal like that. Tommy, what are your thoughts on parents invoking themselves into their children's lives, especially, primetime college athletes? This is going to be a target on his back for sure, heading in the NBA, whichever team he drafts him. So, I mean, what is your perspective on all this?
Well, two things that I see is, one is he knows that he's not the athlete his son is, but he wants to live the dream. So it seems like he's forcing himself into his son's body pretty much and trying to, talk like a puppet pretty much, saying, no, I'm the best, this is not going to happen, pay me money even though I'm not even in the NBA. Understandable, you can see your son's talent, but, pump the brakes. It's not your life, it's his life. And the more that you distract from his game and from his life, puts more pressure on the kid itself. Because if he underperforms in the NBA, that's going to be detrimental to his game, and he might not even come, which is the sad part. Too much pressure breaks stone, pretty much. It may create diamonds in some situations, but if you're too powerful, you're going to lose. Another thing is just a parent's prerogative to help their son as best as possible and help them through anything troubling that might happen. And I feel like he's just overcompensating for this as well. So Lonzo Ball's father just needs to pump the brakes, take a chill pill, stop being in the center of media, because all he's doing is getting his son into a lot of trouble.
Now, at the beginning of the show, I had 2 words to say to him, Lonzo Ball, and these 2 words are just this: just shut up. Honestly, it really is. It's not that difficult. And again, I have friends who have children that are playing sports right now, and they're very happy for them, posted on social media all the time. And for me, that's awesome. And in this age, yeah, you're going to be proud of your son's accomplishments or your daughter's accomplishments in whatever they do. Some are in soccer, some are in basketball, some in other sports. And again, as you're growing older, you're going to try new things. And as a parent, I think you just, at the very least, just support them and, hope they do well to the very best of their athletic ability. Now, beyond that, if they're going to be a potential, NBA draft pick or baseball draft pick or soccer player, whatever it may be, don't interfere. Because, again, what you're doing, as I mentioned previously, you're putting a target on his back. And as you mentioned, Tommy, if he underperforms, that's not going to look good. And then again, it's a lot of the criticism is not going to fall. It's going to fall on his father for being an overprotective father, or at least a very involved father, more than just at least, hey, I'll be here when you need me, and I'll be here, just as supporting you, be your guy from day one kind of guy. But beyond that, I think you just have to let him make his own decisions, let him kind of figure out his own path. And honestly, Lonzo Ball, for all the criticism his dad gets, he's been very, Lonzo Ball said very little about his dad. He said, you know what? Yeah, that's my dad. Just let it be. And then he goes on to answer just regular basketball questions, which really is a really good professional manner to conduct yourself when you have outside distractions. So for Lonzo Ball, I wish nothing but the best for him. But it's going to be a very, very interesting situation to see how, how his dad reacts, or, as the tournament moves on. Because, again, it's between him and Markelle Fultz for the number 1 pick. And again, if the things stay as is, it looks like he's going to be projected to go to Boston, because the Nets are the worst team in the league. But with that trade a couple years ago, Boston has that number 1 pick. So it'd be really, really ironic for him to go to the rival franchise of the Lakers and the Celtics if he gets drafted number 1. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about Baker Mayfield's arrest and how that's going to affect college basketball or college football. And we'll each throw in a drunk story or two when we back in the college days. Then, yeah, why not? And then, of course, talk about some soccer here. Claudio Ranieri fired from Leicester City. They go on to win their very next game. But what's the right decision? And then, of course, later on in the show, we still have, $100 million, if we won the lottery tomorrow, what would we be doing? We would still be doing the podcast, or would we be chilling in Cancun or somewhere else? We'll talk more after the break here is some more music. All We Need, Odessa on the Spicy Sports Show.